Welcome back. This is Dr. Keith Fairclough, your relationship and emotional intelligence specialist, here to help you fix your relationship, improve your relationship, know how to be in a relationship, and even improve yourself, right? So you can make sure that you're ready. If you're not in a relationship yet, you can be ready when you are ready to get into one, right? So today we're going to be talking about why structure is important in a relationship, right? Because I think it's so often what ends up happening is that we don't really treat our relationships with that level of how do I put it, seriousness. Because you think about everything else, right? You think about business. A business has to have structure if it's going to be successful. Kids, if they're going to learn, if we're going to learn, we got to have structure. A workout plan, our diets, everything else in our life only works with proper structure. And when we know this, right, we know that these things don't work without structure. If your money doesn't have structure, if it's just going everywhere, that's why we have a budget, right? And we don't go beyond the budget. We stay within the budget because we know structure is critically important. If you're of the faith, our faith has structure. Everything that's important in this world has structure. But yet, the most important relationship in the world, we don't have any structure to it. We don't have structure for how we handle conflict. We don't have structure for how we have communication. We don't have structure for how we deal with our children. We don't have structure for our money. We don't have structure for what goals we're trying to achieve. We just get together and we're just like, oh, we're just gonna just love and just gonna figure it out. You know, do we do that with anything else in our life that's really, really important? Do we just throw up and up, leave it up to chance and just say, hey, we'll figure it out we'll bump our head along the way and figure it out? Or do we understand that there's got to be structure? There's got to be structure to how I study so I can be successful on the test. I can't just open the book up and just get random information from everywhere and hope to do good on a chapter 1 test. No, chapter 1, that's what we go to, right? We go to the chapter 1. Hey, what do we go over in class? Maybe there's what is it called? A study guide, right? That has structure. These are things that are important. These things are not important. Although funny story real quick, when I was in college and I was taking AMP2 with Dr. Hames at Florida State University a while back, she gave us a study guide on what was going to be on the test. And literally the study guide was every single thing we went over. Like nothing was left out. My bro, you could have just said study your notes. you could have just said study your notes, right? But in any case, I digress, right? There was a structure to it. Her structure was very specific, like you got to know everything. But it's the same thing. In every other area of our life, we understand the importance of structure and consistency. But yet when it comes to our relationship, where there's no structure, there's no consistency. We just figure it out. We start making stuff up. We start getting random information that just confirms a lot of our negative behaviors anyways, or maladaptive behaviors anyways. And then we say the other person's the problem, or they say we're the problem, and a relationship suffer and fail, or we believe these cultural norms that are wrong, and we bring that foolishness into our relationship, and then we wonder why we struggle so much, because we don't have structure. We don't have a proper way to go about doing things. I'm telling you right now, there is a proper way to go about doing things. There is a structure we can have in our relationship so that we don't have to experience these problems. And it doesn't matter if you're white or black or Hispanic or Asian or Indian or Native American. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter your culture. It doesn't matter. There is a right way to go about doing a relationship. There's a right structure that we can have when it comes to doing our relationships. Now, I know you might be like, oh, Keith's going to give us a secret sauce today. This is going to be, I have a session in a few, in about 10 minutes or so. And I'm so sorry to keep doing that to you guys. I think I might come back on later on tonight and dive a little bit deeper into this. But what I'm going to do is talk about why the structure is important, what it does in your relationship, because the same thing structure does in other areas of your life is the exact same thing it does in your relationship. So let's start off with talking about some of the things it can do. structure in your relationship, like how you run anything, right? How you have communication, how you deal with each other, your intimate life, how you deal with your kids, your money. Anything that has to do with your relationship requires structure. But here's the benefit to having structure in your relationship. The first one is predictability. Structure gives you predictability. When we set date night once a month, twice a month, once a week, whatever, it's predictable. We know when to show up. We know what we're going to be doing. We know to block that time off. We set up intimacy once a week or twice a week or 3 times a week or whatever. We know when that's going to come, right? When we set up time for us to talk and discuss any issues or problems we might be having or growth that we can all probably engage in, it's predictable. We know when to look for it, right? It creates that predictability. And with predictability, there's a sense of safety there, right? Which kind of leads to the next thing. Structure gives you security. I know that there's a time and space for us to talk about things that might bother us during the week. I know there's a way we can have a conversation where it's going to be fruitful. I know that if something goes on, there's a system in place to take care of it. So it gives us a sense of security, and security is critical in a relationship, especially for women. That's one of the things that they crave more than anything else, right? So that security is important, that the structure is important, right? There's systems and fail-safes in place, right? I'll give you an example for a structure to set up in your finances, right? And again, PSA, public service announcement. I'm not a financial advisor. This is just an example, right? Good example, probably should follow, but just an example. So don't come after me like, oh, you gave me financial advice. Don't do that, right? So for instance, having an emergency fund, having a well-funded emergency fund, ideally 3 to 6 months of your expenses saved up. That's a structure that gives you security. A quick story from me. I remember when I didn't have it, and every time emergency, because it's not really an emergency because these things are going to happen, but every time an emergency came up, I'm out here, oh my gosh, it's so bad. Oh my gosh, why me, God? Oh, I'm blaming. And it wasn't until God was like, almost like smacked me upside the head, like, bruh, stop. You already know you're supposed to have an emergency fund. You guys have had plenty of money to put in that over the time to cover this $700 emergency that you knew was going to happen. Stop crying to me about it and do what you're supposed to do. Have the structure, use it. And so then guess what happened? Oh, I started to do the structure. So now guess who? The security is there now. If something comes up, guess what? We can fall back on the structure. There's security. There's emergency fund that's built up. So now there's no emergency that can pop up that I'm not ready for. Again, structure builds security, right? What else does structure give us? It gives us standards. The standards by which we live life, the boundaries, the things that keep our relationships safe. That's a big thing. When I do premarital counseling with couples, it's a big thing for them to make sure they have proper boundaries around the relationship. And another way of calling them of boundaries, another way of saying it is those are standards. How do we want our relationship to go? What do we want it to be like? Who can be involved? Like all those questions, like you get to now think of it like, I don't want to say like, HR, like bringing people in. I guess you could say it like that. But really think of it more in terms of like, these are the things that keep us safe. These are the things that keep us in line. This is how we know how to operate. When we're coming out of character, these are the things that we can do in order to make sure that we get back on track. Right? We have a standard of how we treat one another. If I make a mistake, I'm going to own that behavior immediately. That's a standard that we have in our relationship. And so a part of structure is having that standard, right? Because if I have that standard, I can rely on that. Another part of structure in relationships is scalability. I know you might think, well, scalability, what do you mean? Well, first and foremost, thinking about your kids, right? That's scaling your family, right? But also you can add to it, right? This kind of ties into standards as well and boundaries. But as you scale your family outside your relationships, you have your kids, then you can start picking up other people. You start putting other positive people in your life. When you have proper structure in your relationship, you'll know who to bring in, who to allow in, right? Who you can trust in and talk to, how you can expand, how you can grow, how you can instill different values and morals into your children. Maybe you guys then branch out. Maybe you start adopting children, or maybe you start volunteering, or maybe you start working together with other people. Like you're able to scale, right? You can have bigger dreams and bigger goals, right? Because we have a structure and a standard we can build off of. Now we're not making it up as we go along. Now we know what we can handle. Now we know what we'll allow. Now we know what we want our family to look like and our relationship to look like. So now we can actually scale it. Now we can actually scale and bring the right people in. Now we can actually scale and grow and do different things, and maybe get with other couples that also have structure and standard. And now we could all come together and be there to support one another. But if we don't have a structure, we cannot scale properly. I know there's a scripture in the Bible that talks about how if you want to be a deacon, or if you want to be a bishop, and this is specifically for men, right? You have to be a proper ruler over your own house. So essentially, if you want to be over the flock of God, if you want to be over God's people in that way, you can't scale there until your home is taken care of. You got to make sure that's taken care of. And that's another big thing as well. Because there's a lot of times we want to go out there, we want to coach other people, we want to, do community work, and we want to do all these things, but your marriage is burning down to the ground. You want to save everybody else, but your marriage is burning around to the ground. You want to be Superman or Superwoman to all these other kids out here, and they love you and they're giving you hugs and everything like that. Your kids rarely ever see you. That's not scalability. And if you're not doing this right, if you don't have structure, if you're not taking care of home first, your family, your relationship is going to crumble. Just like a business that tries to scale too fast. If they try to scale too fast, let's say they can't meet orders and they can't do things along those lines, they can't meet the fulfillment, it crumbles under its own weight. Then anyone who has a business, you understand there's an importance. You have to know when you can scale. But you cannot scale if you don't have structure. If it's a disaster, it's a mess, and if things are all over the place and there's fires, then you cannot scale. Get that right first. But structure allows you to do so. Because as you build the structure out properly, then guess what? Now we have a good base to build on. Now we can scale. Now we can do more. Now that my kids are great, now I can go out there and help other kids. Now that my marriage is great, now I can go out there and help other marriages. Now that I got my spiritual life in order and got my family's spiritual life in order, now I can go help other people. But I can't do that until I first do this. If you have another business, and then I'm going to move on to the next thing, right? So if you have a business, you can't scale international if you're not even doing anything properly right now and where you are with what you have. How can you do that? It's going to be too big, too wide, too much. You're going to fail under your own weight. So again, structure allows us to scale in relationships, allows us to help more people. I'm using a personal example by all the things that I've learned in my relationship, and also from my practice and things like that, and my own learning and everything. That's allowed me to scale how I treat people outside of my relationship, because now I can love my wife and listen to understand and not respond and not be judgmental and not tell her what she thinks and feels and things like that. Guess what now I can do? I can also do that with my children. Scale. I cannot do that with my siblings. Scale. I can do that with my mom. Scale. Clients, friends, family, students, people online. Scale. That's what that looks like. But I would be a charlatan and a fake and a phony if I didn't get that right with my wife, but I'm coming to try to tell you how to save your relationship. If I didn't get that right with my kids, but I'm telling you how to do it with your kids, right? That's what scaling looks like, right? All right, last one, before we have to kind of shut it down, right? Productivity. If there's no structure, you cannot be productive. Your relationship must, if you want it to be productive, you want to get the love that you want out of it. You want to get the affection you want out of it. You want to get the intimacy you want out of it. You want the growth and the goal attainment and the kids and the family and all those things. If you want your relationship to be productive, you have to have structure. If there's no structure, you cannot be productive. Think of it, if anyone who might struggle with ADHD, And to think about when you're trying to plan something, right? And your mind's just all over the place and shiny. And then you're here and then you're there and you got this ding. And then before it's all said and done, you're all over the place and nothing gets done. So just because you're doing a whole bunch of stuff doesn't mean you're being productive. Structure allows for us to be productive in our relationship, productive in our conversation, productive with our children, productive with our money, because that structure locks us in. Structure in that sense, let's use a communication for an example, right? Structure is going to dictate that we focus on one issue at a time. If I bring an issue over to my wife, she's the listener, I'm the speaker, one issue at a time, we can solve that problem. That's productive. That's structure. But what ends up happening a lot of times in relationships is that one person will bring a situation up, then the other person will bring a situation up, and I'm talking about my situation, you're talking about your situation, then I bring this example up, and then you're talking about how we resolve that and why you're bringing that up, and now you don't love me, and now we want to get divorced, and now no structure. That's a very unproductive conversation because there's no structure. It's my turn first to speak, your turn to listen, and then there's a structure even to how we speak. Because I got to make sure I'm conveying this message in a way that you can receive it. And if I'm not saying it in a way that you can receive it, I'm outside of the structure. That's going to make for an unproductive conversation. If I'm attacking you and using you statements and criticism and contempt, that's not good structure. That's not going to be productive at all. It's just not. So it's so important. It's so important for us to keep that in mind, that just like anything else in our life that's important, our weight loss goals or our business or our money or anything else in life that's important, understand that it has structure. And there's no relationship in our life that's more important than our intimate relationship. But even more specifically, our marriage, right? That's the most important relationship in our life. And if we're going to be successful, if we're going to beat the odds, if we're going to make sure we stay together forever, I'm telling you right now, your relationship must have structure. And so, like I said before, I love this topic. It kind of came to me. This actually wasn't the one I was going to talk about at first. I have another one I was going to talk about. It had to do with like attachment stuff like that, and we'll get to that. But this one kind of came up just to my mind, and so I really do want to drive a little bit deeper. I want to talk about some of that structure is, what communication structure looks like, what emotional regulation structure looks like, and things like that, so that you guys can have an actual working template to come off of, right? But if you don't want to wait for those live streams, if you are saying like, you know what, Keith, my marriage is on fire right now, I need something now. I did update my Linktree profile. So if you want to go and grab yourself, one of the workbooks or one of the resources that are there, please do that, right? Your relationship is worth it. Your marriage is worth it. You don't have to throw it away. If you get the right structure in place, you guys can be successful. I promise you right there, right? I promise you. So we have a communication one. We have a workbook where you could build out a weekly reset. It's called the Rebuild and Renew, the weekly reset. And it goes through the whole thing. It talks about a lot of stuff. I don't even have time to even go into all that it talks about, but it talks about how to schedule a meeting once a week and how you could actually do it and what it looks like. So you guys can help resolve a lot of issues that you may have. And also, and this is really important because so often we talk about the problems in relationships, but I'm telling you right now, we get to a point where we stop talking about problems, we start talking about growth. And so that workbook can get you from just talking about problems to actually talking about growth, right? There's a Yes Sir communication workbook that gives you the specific structure to how to have a conversation with your spouse. And then there's the boundary workbook that teaches you how to have boundaries. And it talks about 9 different domains that you could actually tap into and learn those different boundaries in those domains. So you can start teaching people how you want to be treated. It also teaches you how to enforce those boundaries as well. All right. So all that being said, again, I'm going to flesh this out a little bit more, give you more content on what structure is going to look like in your relationship, but that'll be in some later live streams down later on this week, right? But you all take care. Have a great, awesome, and blessed day. We'll be back again tomorrow. And again, always, always, always remember this, is that you are not alone. All right, take care. Have a great and blessed day. I'll see y'all soon.